experience? Or have you been sexually abused? Okay? Have you been raised in a family where there was divorce? Have you been raised in a family where there's been addiction? Have you been raised in a family where your basic needs, your love needs, were not well met, either emotionally or even physically? Okay? Have you been raised where there's been, did I mention divorce? You know, have you been raised where you've had a family member in prison? I mean, there are 10 basic ACEs that were in the original study. And what the research shows, that if you have one or more ACEs compared to people who have none, you have a higher risk of, listen, you have a higher risk of chronic illness. Things like heart disease, things like diabetes, things like cancer. You have a higher risk of those things if you have one or more of those. And not only physical illness, but a higher risk of depression, of anxiety, of suicidal thinking. Okay? Because what is the message that you've received through that trauma? You've received negative messages about yourself that somehow you're not enough. There's something wrong with you. You know, I have the right to do whatever I want with you, and you don't matter. You know, those kind of messages that leave a person without a good, solid sense of themselves. Okay? But then when that happens, what do we tend to do? When we live with pain, do you like living with pain? So what do we try to do? We try to medicate that pain, right? We medicate that pain. And so some of us, you know, we work to medicate that pain. Or some of us eat to medicate that pain. You know, we're good Adventists, right? So we don't do alcohol or drugs, right? Okay. Now, you can talk to me if you want. But the reality is that a lot of us today do that too. You know, in Christian men, including Adventist Christian men, how many of us do pornography? Between 60 and 70%. That's what the research shows. And among women, it's been going up too. Close to 40% now is what the statistics show. So why do we do those things? Because we like doing those things? No, normally what we're doing is we get trapped into that, medicating our pain, okay? And emotions and people, you know, there are people who are addicted to people. I have to be with someone in order to make me someone. You know, we fall into that kind of thinking. And so it's important that we recognize that. Okay, there we go. Okay, now, in addition to that, we all have love needs, okay? We all have love needs. You know, the need for affection and nurture. Now, Hillary's going to have a baby soon, right? Yay, right? Now, when a mama has a baby, when a mother has a baby, how does that mother show affection and nurture from the time that baby is born? Talk to me.
Careful with what they eat.
Okay. How else? How else do we show? Go ahead.
Change their diaper.
I'm sorry, what?
Change their diaper.
Change their diaper. Well, of course, yes. Of course. But, you know, a part of what moms do is they, you know, when the baby's born, and you've been waiting 9 months for this baby to be born, this little girl, right? You've been waiting. And now she's here. And your mother's heart says, oh, I've been waiting for you. I've been wanting you. You know, in the womb, I've been talking to you, and I've been saying, oh, baby, I can't wait for you to come. You know, and what happens when that baby is welcomed, and when you're born, they cut the umbilical cord, and that baby kind of crawls up to your breast and starts nursing, you know, and and there's an exchange of that nutrition, but there's also something else that happens at that moment when that baby is loved and welcomed and fed. And it's called what? What is it called? A bonding. Connection. Okay? That begins being formed between the mother and that baby. And that's foundational for that baby to feel loved, to feel safe, to feel soothed. When the baby cries because they have a dirty diaper or they're hungry, and you come as a mom, that baby experiences you soothing them, and they stop crying, and they start nursing, or their diapers change, and they feel good, and they can start playing again, or whatever. Their needs are met, okay? And so affection and nurture. Now, are there some mothers who get pregnant and they have a hard time welcoming their baby? Take my precious, precious wife, Beverly. She was a victim of having been molested. Her mother even rejected her from the womb. She tried to abort her as a little baby in the womb, okay? She had all kinds of trauma like that. Molested at the age of 3 or 4 and all of that. So when some young man came up to her when she was 13 and said, "You can't get pregnant when you have sex," she believed him and got pregnant at age 13. Now, do you think she wanted to be pregnant at age 13? No. Okay? And so when you have those kinds of things, or if a child is a victim of rape or incest or whatever it may happen to be, those mothers aren't sure they want to be pregnant or have that baby then. And so they don't get the welcome that you're giving your little one, And so, that's a form of trauma that occurs even in the womb. But you know what the good news is? Jesus is capable of even healing in the womb. Amen. Going back and doing that. He's not limited by space or time, is he? Okay? So affection and nurture, affirmation. What messages did you hear when you were a little one about you? Were you affirmed? Jesus was affirmed at his baptism, right? His father said, "You are my beloved son, in whom I'm well pleased." Did you hear that when you were a child? By your father, by your mother, "You're my beloved daughter, my beloved child"? Or did you hear messages like, "You're not enough, there's something wrong with you, you can't do anything right, you're dumb, you're stupid, you're lazy"? I mean, whatever messages you received, what were they? But, what God does is he affirms us as our heavenly parent. Well, time and attention too. Were your parents able to spend time with you? One of the banes of our existence in this country is that parents are too busy doing stuff, trying to make a living, whatever, and there are a lot of reasons why that occurs, but the children don't get the time and attention that they really need. Okay? So how well was that love need met in you? And then protection. Did you know that your parent would fight for you if need be to protect you? Okay? Would they fight for you? Did they love you that much to say, you cannot do that for my child? Okay? Again, another little story from Beverly's life. When she was 5 years old, Daddy would take them to church, drop them off. They weren't Adventists at that point. It was a Sunday church. But he would take them, drop them off, pick them up, and take them for a ride. Okay? Well, this particular Sunday, he did that, stopped under a bridge in the inner city of Cleveland and said to her, "You've been a bad little girl. We don't want you anymore. Get out." And her mother, because there was domestic violence and stuff going on, was not strong enough to protect her and to say no. They put her out and they drove away. What would that be like if you could put yourself in that situation, not being protected, being told just the opposite? "You're bad, we don't want you, we're going to discard you." Can you imagine the trauma that produced? So protection. But also in the family, when mom and dad set, good, boundaries and good rules, that protects the child. In our family, we're going to respect one another. We're not going to call one another names, and if anything, I want you to feel free to come and talk to me if something happens, because I'm going to intervene. I'm going to protect you. This family's going to be a safe place. Okay? And then discipline. Do children mess up? Do children mess up, huh? Okay, come on now. Speak to me. Have any of you never messed up as kids? I know I sure did. Okay, as much as I tried to be perfect, I wasn't. Okay? And so when we mess up, the word discipline means what? To disciple, to teach, to use it as a learning opportunity rather than an opportunity to beat somebody up. You know what I'm saying? So to teach them, to learn, help them learn. And then, of course, how many of you, as a little kid, you were playing around and you got hurt. And you started crying and you came to mommy. Oh, mommy, mommy. And mommy kissed it and made it better. Yes. Yeah, right? Yeah, we do. But sometimes, we're not comforted. We're not comforted well. And how many of us know Jesus is our Savior, Jesus is our Lord, but not as our comforter when we're hurting? That's why we turn to alcohol, drugs, sex, whatever else, food, whatever we do, because we don't know that Jesus is our comforter experientially. And so it's hard for us to go to him. And then finally, guidance. Could you tell your parents when you really messed up? Could you go to them and talk to them about it and get good guidance from them? Some people can, but a lot of us couldn't. Because what? If I tell my parents that, I'm going to, and you fill in the blank, right? Something bad's going to happen. So we don't feel safe to tell our parents when we mess up. So these are basic love needs. So there we go. So what happens when our basic love needs are not met? We live in our family of origin, our family system, with dysfunctional messages. Okay? And I want you to, again, think about your own story here. What messages did you live life by in your family of origin? Again, we're setting the stage here to talk about what during the church service? Anyone know? We're talking about sex during the worship service. So don't talk about what goes on in this family. Don't tell anybody. Any of you have that rule in your family of origin? In other words, don't make the family look bad by telling anybody what goes on here. Okay? Don't talk about it. Protect the family. When a child is really, really hurt, do they need to talk and process that pain in order to heal? We do. We absolutely do. But don't talk means, keep it inside, stuff it away. Don't feel the pain. Don't process the pain, which we have to do to be healthy. Okay? And if you start sharing your feelings with me, what is that going to do? It means I have to start processing my pain too, and I surely don't want to do that. If I'm your parent, I've been stuffing it for years maybe. Or don't trust. Don't trust. A lot of us live with the effects of trauma and adverse childhood experiences or neglect. And so we learned, I can't trust. I can't trust. We live by shame. We live by fear. And so we don't trust. And how does that translate even into our relationship with God? Some of us want to trust God. Some of us know He invites us to trust Him, but our trust only goes so far. And why do you think that is? Why do you think some of us struggle with that? Because our parents stand in God's place. And whatever our experience of our parents were, we tend to transfer that onto God. Okay? That's why it's important for us to be on our own journey of healing, so that we can take our parents off the pedestal that they've been on and begin really exploring our relationship with God, our faith, ourselves. Okay? So this is important. Or, be good. Be a good little boy. Be a good little girl. Be perfect. I internalized those beliefs myself because that's what my family expected me to be. And I went away at the age of 13. I was raised on a farm with 9 sisters and 5 brothers. Large farm family. We were a Catholic family. Parents didn't believe in birth control, right? Until after number 15, my mom went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "Betty, you better not have any more kids because your body just can't handle it." Okay? And so she went to the priest, and she told the priest, "The doctor says, I shouldn't have any more kids." And the doctor said, "Bless you, Betty, I think you've done your job by now. You can go ahead and use birth control." So, but at the age of 13, I went away to study to be a priest. And I was in the seminary for 7 years studying to be a priest. Okay? Because every Catholic family wants what? A son who's a priest, right? Isn't that the ideal that many of us have? Anyone here have a Catholic background, or were you all raised Adventist? A few of you, huh? So you know what I'm talking about, right? I was an altar boy and did all of those things, because I needed to be a model person. And I was voted model seminarian 2 years in a row, I kind of lived up to that ideal. But I didn't recognize my own brokenness and my own need for healing as a part of my journey. I lived as if I were perfect. And so when I became an Adventist, you know what? I became what I call a good Catholic Adventist. You know what I mean by that? As Adventists, we have very high standards, don't we? And so one of them was, for example, you don't eat meat. And it's like, oh, well, I had meat in the refrigerator, before I became an Adventist. And it's like, wait a minute. If I eat meat, I was still living by fear. I was living by fear. And so if Ellen White said it, right away I have to do it or else I'm going to be lost. So I brought that kind of thinking, that fear-based religion, into my Adventist experience. And I've since learned that God loves me no matter what. The songs that you guys are singing and all of that about God and His amazing love, amazing grace, I had to shift from a fear and shame-based reality, which was what I lived by, to a love-based reality. And that took a while to learn how to make that transition, from I can't do anything wrong or else I'm going to be condemned, to God loves me. And I want, because He loves me, to love Him back in the best way that I can. So continuing the cycle, okay, a lot of us, what we do in order to survive, we stuff our pain away, put it into the garbage can, and then what do? We develop structures to survive the pain of our life, our ACEs, or when our love needs were not adequately met. We stuff in the garbage can, but our survival mechanisms, and I wonder how many of you can relate to these survival mechanisms. In order to survive, you have to be in control. You have to be in control. Now, you have to be in control yourself and not do anything wrong to survive, but you also have to do what? To control other people, right? You have to control other people. For many of us, our life has been so chaotic as children, that we have to be in control somehow. And the reality is, do you know people who try to be in control? There are a lot of us who do that very subtly or very, openly, be in control. But when you find someone who needs to be in control, rather than address, you're a controlling person, okay, rather than what are you doing, what trauma asks us to do is ask this question instead. What happened to you that now you're needing to control? What happened to you? In other words, we learn, and this is such a beautiful lesson of love, we learn to address the pain rather than the behavior. We try to look for the scared and hurt little boy or little girl that is underneath that need to control. We begin then inviting people to begin a journey of healing rather than stay stuck in controlling or whatever their behavior is. Okay? So, controlling. Can any of you relate to that? I certainly can in my own life. There was a time when I needed to kind of keep myself safe because I wasn't sure God was going to keep me safe. Okay? We become self-dependent. When you learn that you can't depend upon mom and dad because they're just not there. And again, I'm not condemning mom and dad. I'm just sharing what the experience is. Maybe they needed to work all the time because of the low-paying job that they could get. Maybe they had to work 2 or 3 jobs. Or maybe dad wasn't there, so you were just with mom alone and, or with dad alone, and they just had to work. Or maybe they were just so wrapped up in their own pain that they missed you. You couldn't depend on them. Often what I have seen is what we call a parental inversion, where little children almost have to take care of their parents. Now, I'm not talking adults here. I'm talking about children. Okay? I can remember one time working with this woman, and she was 5 years old when her mom said, do you think I should get pregnant again? Can you imagine a parent asking a 5-year-old, should I have another baby? Well, and what do you think she said? Little Helen said, no, because I don't want anyone else to be brought in with the experience that I'm having. But do you see the parental inversion there? A little child being asked to make adult decisions. Or in many dysfunctional families, what happens is that if the parents are not healthy and able to really love their kids the way they need, the children form a little subsystem, okay? And often you have one of the older children who is put in the position of caretaking the younger children. They're the ones who do the cooking and they iron the clothes and make sure that they get to school and all of that, because mom and dad are not, for whatever reason. Again, we're not condemning mom and parents in this. Please, I don't want to get that message. Most of our parents do the very best that they feel that they can do. But they only got, I'm going to give you this analogy. What does Bethlehem mean? What? House of bread, right? House of bread. So you needed bread, a full loaf of bread. Your mom and dad needed a full loaf of bread from their grandpa and grandma. But all they could get is a slice because that's all mom and dad had to give. And you needed a full loaf of bread from them too, but all mom and dad had to give you were the crumbs. That's all they had to give. But where can we go to get a full loaf that we need? Bethlehem. house of bread. Who was born in Bethlehem? Absolutely. Jesus was born in Bethlehem. Okay? And we can find, this God who will supply all of our needs, even though mom and dad couldn't. But sometimes we just don't know how to come to him, We don't know how to come and get our needs met by him. So some of us become performance-oriented. What does that mean? It's like, if I perform well enough for you, whether it's at school or whether it's at home or whether it's through working hard, if I perform well enough, did anybody relate to that? Then you'll love me. If I perform well enough. For example, how many of you, got the message from your parents that you need to do really well in school, right? You need to do really well in school. And so you come home with a B rather than an A. And what do you get? What's wrong with you? Why'd you get a B? You didn't work hard enough? What's wrong with you? Performance, we're sending the message of performance. I'm not happy with you unless you excel. Okay? Unless you excel. So performance-oriented, where love is conditioned based upon your performance. Okay? Again, how many of you can identify with that? Now, children who've been really, really hurt, learn to live as a victim. They learn to live as a victim, okay? And they develop kind of a victim mindset, something that says something like, poor me, ain't it awful? Do you know about birth order at all? Some of you do. But normally, firstborn children, I'm secondborn, firstborn children take on the characteristics, the unresolved issues, normally of the father. Firstborn. Any of you in here firstborn? Yeah. Unresolved issues of the daddy. I have an older sister, okay? I have an older sister, and she's up now in her 70s. And my dad was a very, very heavy drinker. And my dad, he was the one who was in control. He told mom what to do, what to wear, what to do. He was in control. He told all of us what to do. Okay? Very much in control. Now, my older sister, in her old age, she's drinking heavily just like Dad. She is, unfortunately. And she manages things. She's in control, just like Dad. I'm number 2, like Mom. Okay? Mom had no voice. Mom was a victim in the family. Whatever Dad said, okay, I'll do it. Okay? And I can remember on my journey of healing, when I first began my own journey, someone came to me who cared about me, a coworker, and he said, David, do you know that you have a problem with self-pity? And how did I respond to that? Did I say, oh, yes? No, I didn't say, oh, yes. I said, really? Because often we don't see things about ourselves, do we? Other people, we also need safe people who love us enough to share with us what they see. My coworker saw something I didn't see, but he also said this, here's a book about self-pity. I want you to read it, and see what you see. I said, okay. I read that book, and man, I saw myself. It's like, oh, I guess I am like my mom, number 2. But what those give us opportunities to begin healing, to begin growing. It's like, oh, now that I see it, I can begin processing it. But when you don't see it, when you're blind, you can't do anything if you're blind to it, right? And how many of us are blind? But, this wonderful, wonderful Jesus came, and a part of his mission was to give sight to the blind, to set the captives free, to heal the brokenhearted. You know, and how much, that applies to us, and we don't even see it sometimes. I know I didn't see it for the longest time, but God was gracious enough to help me see myself and my need to be on that journey. Okay? So, now, one of the things about victims is, what do you think the payoff is for being a victim, for living as a victim? Not having a voice. What do you think the payoff is? We don't do stuff unless there's some kind of payoff, right? What do you think the payoff is for that? I know for me, the payoff was this. If I'm a victim, life just happens to me. Other people can make the decisions for me. I don't need to take responsibility for my own life and my own decisions. Life just happens, And God wanted me to grow to the point of taking responsibility. And, I can remember even in ministry, Beverly and I have been in ministry now for many, many years, and I would ask God, doesn't this sound holy? I would ask God, Lord, where do you want us to go in ministry? Because, God had us move around like pastors do, a lot of different places. Should I accept this call, or should we go here, or should we go there? Lord, what do you want me to do? Doesn't that sound holy? Right? And certainly, we need to be open to asking God for direction in our lives. But God knew that I was asking that question from a victim point of view, not from a healthy point of view. So you know what God told me? You decide. Whatever you decide, I know you love me as best you can, but you decide. Because He wanted to empower me to grow. He wanted to empower me to grow. So, you decide. So I decided. I began growing. But victims also then become victimizers. There's that victim-victimizer cycle. A lot of people in prison, have been victimized, and then they took advantage of other people. That cycle we often see. Well, some people learn that in order for them to survive, they have to fight. Any of you raised in a situation where, you were maybe bullied or whatever it may happen to be, and you learned that you had to fight to survive, okay? That's my wife. For her to fight, to survive in her family, Beverly had to fight. But what happens is that became her automatic response. It was wired into her brain to fight. So when we got married, okay, you laugh, huh? But that was her, why are you fighting about this, And I was more of a conflict avoider, just the opposite. I didn't like to fight. So how do you think that turned out in our marriage, huh? We had to work through that dynamic with each other. Okay, so some people fight and some people avoid conflict because we're afraid of it. It was so much in our family that, I don't want to live that way. Okay, I see you guys. I see you guys there, okay. Or some people become a noble martyr. I'm divorced. My first marriage lasted 12 and a half years. And in that marriage, my wife, just think about the cycle now for a moment. Who do you think I would marry if I'm like number 2? Who am I going to be likely to marry? Especially if I'm unhealthy and I haven't grown yet, which I wasn't. I'm going to marry someone like my dad. I married someone who drank and used drugs, and I was working in the field of addiction recovery at the time, and it's like, oh no, what's going on here? I didn't know it when I married her, but that is what she turned out to be. Okay? And I didn't know what to do with that. By God's grace, she got into recovery, and that started me on my journey of recovery, right now. How many of you know about a program in the North American Division Health Ministries Department called Adventist Recovery Ministries? Any of you heard of that? Adventist Recovery Ministries. Do you know that our church has a Christ-centered 12-step program? We do. I'm the coordinator for the NAD of Adventist Recovery Ministries because I've been working on recovery for over 40 years now. I facilitate a meeting 8 o'clock Tuesday nights, or 7 o'clock Tuesday nights, Eastern time, okay, which would be 6 o'clock your time. You know, a 12-step meeting, you know? And so this noble martyr thing, so people would sometimes come up to me in my first marriage and say things like, how do you put up with your wife like that? And I would say, oh, you know, God just helps me with that. You know, kind of that noble martyr kind of thinking, you know. Yes, I am quite a guy, am I not? Do you see the dysfunction in that? Okay. And then, of course, when we're not comforted, we get into our own addictive behavior of some kind or another, you know, the way we have talked about. Or codependent behavior, where we need to take care of everybody else. You know, we need to fix them. You know, we get into caretaking rather than caregiving. And that's not really helpful to people. We don't empower people that way. Or these two go to church often. You know, we become judgmental of others. You know, you're not doing it the way I would do it. There's something wrong with you. So we put ourselves up here, other people down below us, you know, or self-righteous. You know, look at me, you know, I do everything just right. You know, those are, believe it or not, those are survival mechanisms. Now, I want to ask you this. What message do our survival mechanisms give God? What message do our survival structures, those things that we do to survive, what message do they give God? I don't need you. Wow. I don't need you. In other words, you're not enough, God. We've received the message, we're not enough, and that message gets passed along to God. You're not enough to control my life, so I have to control it. I can't really depend upon you, and because you let all this stuff happen to me in the first place. You see the logic in that? You know? Or you're not a very good comforter, God, even though you say you're the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all of our tribulations, but I sure don't feel that kind of comfort, so I'm going to medicate my own pain. Do you see that? We often pass along to God our issues, okay? And so it's important for us to understand why we do what we do, to begin our own journey of healing. And you know what? Families provide that opportunity for us to heal, or just the opposite, to even get more broken, depending on how we do it. Okay, so here we go. We start, you know, with we start with the needs of children, and we start with what we put in the garbage can, what we do to survive. Okay? We see our dysfunctional family system messages: don't talk, don't feel, don't trust, be good, be perfect. And then we build these structures to survive. Okay? Now, if a person is living that way, who do you think they're going to be attracted to? Who are they going to be attracted to if they want to marry someone? What family system theory says is this: you're going to be attracted to someone who is as well differentiated or as healthy as you are, or as unhealthy as you are. Okay? Now, that lack of health may look different, An addict may marry a codependent, someone who feels like they can fix them and control them, and, but it's not going to be any healthier. Even though they may not drink, they still are living out that dysfunction. Okay? How many times are people who are immature, let's say an immature child, marries a mother figure, someone who he thinks can take care of her, or just the opposite. She marries a knight in shining armor, not someone who is her equal emotionally. Okay? There's this lack, but again, that's very, very predictable that we're going to marry someone about the same level of emotional health that we are. And what I mean by differentiation is this, that I have a solid sense of my own value and worth. I know I'm loved by God, and I have chosen to love myself too. And I'm not giving anyone else the power to determine my value and worth. So you get to say about me whatever you want to. I can't manage or control that, but I'm hanging on to myself and my sense of value and worth as a child of God. I know what He says about me, and I'm going to choose to believe that, not what anyone else says about me. By the way, just a quick question. If you received demeaning messages about you, you're not good enough, you're not valuable enough, there's something wrong with you, are those things true or not? They're not. Okay? So if they're not true, what are they? Lies, right? Who's the father of lies? John 8:44, right? So it really comes down to, am I going to believe the father of lies and someone who's telling me those things, or am I going to believe God? And unfortunately, what happens in a lot of families is the children, if these things happen to them young, their brain gets wired to believe these lies and to function in these kinds of negative, self-destructive ways. Okay? That's what they believe about themselves, and it's wired into their brain. And so Satan takes advantage of us very, very young as possible, so that we will be caught in this cycle of dysfunction. Okay? We'll be caught in this cycle of dysfunction. But I love what Jesus said in John 8:32. He said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will" what? That's right. The truth will set you free. Now, most of the time, it's not like a magic wand where, doing, you're transformed. It's a journey. It's a process. But if you allow God to lead you on the journey and in the process, okay, and you find safe communities. So let me just ask real quick. We have 3 minutes and 6 seconds left. Is the Hinsdale Fil-Am Church a safe place for you to be you? To share your journey and your story and your brokenness with somebody else? I mean, do you guys have prayer meeting? Yes. What day is it? Wednesday? Could in prayer meeting, could you get up and say, "Pray for me, brothers and sisters, because I'm really depressed and I'm thinking about committing suicide"? Could you do that? Or, "Pray for me because I'm struggling with pornography"? Is it that safe that you could say those things and not be judged and condemned, but be embraced and say, "Here, let me walk this journey with you. Here are some resources where you can go to, to get help for pornography"? Do you know that our church has pornography recovery resources available? Do you know that? North American Division. Look up Adventist Recovery Ministries. Look on the Family Ministries website for the NAD. There are those resources on it. Also for the General Conference. You know, we have a lot more than what people know that we have available. And of course, we have, as I mentioned to you, the Journey to Wholeness Christ Center 12-step program. But I want to ask you this. The healthier this church becomes, the more that you have small groups where people can talk and heal and grow together, you know, the more you have that, maybe your Sabbath schools can become that. The more you can do that, what's going to happen to the community around you when you go to them and say, here's something. If you're experiencing domestic violence in your family, here's a resource. Here's a place you can come. Or if you've experienced addiction, here we have an addiction 12-step recovery group in our church. Please come. The more you build those safe spaces, you're going to become a light to the community around you. People are going to come because they know, wow, we can come to this church because it's a safe place for us to go. We can find help and resources there. Is that what you want your church to be, to become, huh? I know I do. I do. And so, thank you for allowing me to share this time with you this morning. I really appreciate it. Let's go ahead and have a prayer, together. Father in heaven, thank you so much for this time with this precious, precious family of yours. And I ask God that as we continue our conversation throughout the day, Lord, that your Spirit would guide, and not just guide, Lord, but that this would be a healing time. God, we thank you for that. We give you praise, honor, and glory in the name of Jesus. Amen.